Hey there, welcome to the Exaltify Me podcast. My name is Nenad Leonart, I'm your host, and today we are going to talk about mind games. Now, have you ever been kind of trying to change your life, trying to change your habits, or maybe even implement something that you kind of read and you thought that is going to be really useful for me, and it kind of didn't work? Well, the reason is probably because your mind is playing tricks on you. Now, as human beings, we have this thing called psyche, which is kind of inhabiting our brain or our body or however you want to think about it. And it has very specific rules on how it works. It has its implemented mechanisms that have evolved over hundreds of thousands of years. And if you're not speaking the language of your own psyche, you have no chance of even remotely getting your life under control. Now, let's ask us in the first place, why would we want to get our life under control? There's many different reasons. One of the reasons could be compensating for something. Let's say I'm lacking social skills. I'm kind of missing out on friendships. I would love to have more connection, to go out, to be able to meet new people. But somehow I can't because something inside of me is holding me back. And then there would be a kind of compensation, right? I want to get it under control so I have more friends, I meet more people. Or it could be earning money, right? The more I earn, the better I will feel. Well, we know that studies show that people who are earning more, like above the actual basic needs, that money doesn't necessarily make them happy, right? And friendships, acquaintances, everything that's built kind of an empty shell, that also doesn't make people happy. Like I know a few people that are very well connected, but it's so superficial and they're still kind of depressed about it. So why would you want to get your life under control? And the reason usually is because we don't have our emotions under control. Now, isn't that an interesting one? We kind of want to influence our life so that we get our emotions under control. Now, probably you've heard about this triune brain theory. People talk about 3 brains. Sometimes you'll hear them talk about 4 brains. Basically, the idea is that we have a reptilian brain that is at the core, which is kind of like a really small part that is also at the base of the spine, right? Like beneath the skull, right? And then we have the mammalian brain that grew over that. That would be like the second brain, looking through evolution, right? And the mammalian brain is the one that's responsible for all these emotions, for kind of the non-verbal communication, that everything that's going on. It's securing a lot of the things that are connecting us to other mammals, right? If you look at monkeys, if you look at, I don't know, dogs, cats, like all the pets that we have that are also mammalians, when they have kind of similar behavior like we do, that's kind of that brain being active in us because that's the commonality that we have. And on top of that, there's this third brain, which is the neocortex, that kind of grew and gave us this possibility of having conscious thought, of developing a language so that we can communicate, we can have abstract ideas, and so on. Now, it's very important to understand the hierarchy of these brains, because if the reptilian brain says something, it kind of overrides everything else. If the mammalian brain says something, it kind of overrides the neocortex, right? It's the hierarchy. So when our mind, let's call it the mind, like the conscious thought, the reason, the rationale, that would be the third brain, like the neocortex, which is a very, very fresh brain, evolutionary speaking. It's just like the core. Well, it's not the core. It's at the outside of the brain where it grew. It's not at the core. it's not running the show, but we think it is, right? The way we grow up, the way we go to school, the way we are taught from our parents, from our teachers, from our whole surrounding. We think that we're logical beings and we kind of start to pretend to be logical beings, but it's the other brains that are actually running the show. Now, the very interesting thing that we do as humans is we don't admit to that. We're not saying, well, I have this weirdly old kind of brain that is underdeveloped if you compare it to like the neocortex and the complex reasoning that I can do, and I'm so smart. We don't admit that. So when a human being does something that is completely out of proportion for like logical reasoning, when it's just a weird thing to do, right? When it's a very emotional response, let's say, what we do is then we go into reasoning. And the reasoning is kind of trying to find out a logical reason why we did this thing in the first place, which was an emotional response. And you can see this with people that are getting super triggered, that are getting completely losing control in front of others. And then they will kind of create this very logical reason that sometimes isn't logical at all, but to them it sounds like it's fine. And that's the reason I did it. They've also been doing different experiments with, I remember one experiment where people had like the severed corpus callosum, which is like the part that connects the left brain to the right brain. And sometimes we call like the left side is the one that's more rational, more reasoning, and the right one is more connected to feelings, to emotions, to motivation, and so on. So they would show to the right side of the brain, because they were disconnected, so they would just show it to one eye, like a picture of Coca-Cola. And then this person didn't logically like understand that it saw the picture of Coca-Cola, but they would just kind of get up and go to the vending machine and let out the Coca-Cola to drink. And when they asked them, why did you do that? They said, well, I was feeling thirsty. So they kind of made up the reason that they were feeling thirsty because of the suggestion that they got from the picture of Coca-Cola. Now, obviously here, you can understand that Coca-Cola is one of the most established drinking beverage companies like around the world, and yet every year they're giving out billions and billions for advertising. Because it's worth it. Because when people are walking by a billboard, or when they traveling around them, they just see these Coca-Cola signs, right? Or they see the ads everywhere. This is a subliminal message that is kind of a little bit teasing our brain. Why not get a Coca-Cola? Why not get a Coca-Cola? And we don't consciously like notice this, right? We are not looking at the ad and go like, okay, this is an ad. I should totally go and buy a can of Coke right now. No, it's not how it works. But we do get the subliminal message, and it's kind of priming us and our brain to a certain point where we just go out and do that. So here, the main takeaway is we are not really in control of our brain because we are not in control of what gets in through our senses. Like whatever surrounding we are at, things come in and they influence us on very many different levels. They can influence us on the cognitive behavioral level. They can influence us on the mammalian brain. They can influence us on the reptilian brain. So this is what we're working with. And it's super important to understand that certain problems that we have in life, we cannot solve at the same level that we would like it to solve. If I have a problem that is rooted, let's say, in the reptilian brain, I cannot solve that by reasoning. or the same is with the mammalian. So the idea that, especially like in mental health, mental well-being, if I feel that something's wrong, I'm usually not able to solve that through reasoning, through conscious thinking. And many people do. You have like psychoanalysis, you have like just talking about things, you have like trying to understand everything with the brain, like with you know, like reasonable thought, like with logic. And you can do that up to a certain point, but then it kind of stops. And I've been doing some work with a person that completely try to analyze themselves all the time. And do you know why they did that? Because they would not be able to really take in those emotions, but they were feeling beneath all that. So what they did was kind of the emotions, they were unpleasant. It was about the father, the relationship they had with their father. And the father was kind of abusive and very violent, just aggressive and very strict. And so they had a lot of fear from their father as a kid. Now they repressed these emotions and these memories and everything, but they still kind of form them as a person today. And this is taking up energy to repress them, as we've already talked about. And now they're having certain issues in their life that are kind of trying to solve by logic, by conscious thought. They were, okay, well, I have these difficulties in life, and I'm not able to like connect with other people, or I run away from conflict, like stuff like that. But then we start doing work, and then we notice that they are not able to get in contact with themselves. They're actually always running away when there's something emotional going on beneath. So basically the external issues that they're having with other people is mirroring the internal. And now we've been doing that work, and it was kind of really, really exhausting seeing them try to solve a problem that is on the mammalian level, which is like the fear and just the urge to be hiding and to like be very adhering to the rules that were set by this violent father, right? So that was still going on, but they were trying to solve that with reason. And there's no way to do that. So you need to understand, to escape these kind of, I call them mind games. And I'll tell you just in a minute why I call them mind games. If you want to escape these, you need to move down to the level of the mammalian brain and kind of work it there. And the language of the mammalian brain is like emotions and sensations in the body, and like this very symbolic language. So in his case, he was supposed to like go down and actually start feeling these emotions and working through them, meaning allowing them to happen, feeling them fully, so that he was able to let go of something that he was repressing for a very long time. Now, he didn't do that. At least not fully. Like, he partially then started doing it. And this is also something that's important to understand. Like, this work isn't just done in one single setting and then you're like fixed. It doesn't work that way. It needs a lot of time. It needs a lot of adapting to it. Because again, we need to solve it on another level. And this level, it's not like the thought, let's say you have a math problem and you don't know how to solve it. So you look up the formula and then you have solved it, right? It is much more on a, again, emotional level. And it also kind of is on a habitual level. So you need not just like one formula, but you need to give it time to develop, to balance itself out, to settle itself. You know that like emotions, they're not instant. Both good ones and bad ones. They take their time. And the language of the mammalian brain, of the kind of emotions, of the sensations that we get, it is something that just needs time. It's the same with sleeping. You can't just decide not to sleep. I mean, you can, but look where it's going to get you. Probably end up in a hospital. So there are certain things that our bodies need, and that's just how it's fixed. So in the case of problems at the level of the mammalian brain, you want to give it time and to go into the feeling. You want to go into emotions. So if you don't mind games, you are going to actually have a problem to get into this. Because we as a society, and that kind of started with the Enlightenment period around like the 18th century, where people like thinkers, really great thinkers, started noticing, hey, as humans, we're not really emancipated. We are listening to an elite of like the church and the governments and everybody, and they're kind of just telling us things like our parents do, right? Which we take as absolutes, and we don't really question them. So why don't we start questioning those, right? Which at the time was really useful. Questioning authority, questioning certain, just the status quo, right? It led to the French Revolution. It led to development of democracy. It led to kind of just a general development of humans, which is kind of pretty cool. But we stuck in there. We stuck in there for the last, well, surely more than 200 years. And we're still trying to solve our modern day problems with an idea that's over 200 years old. And to me, it's mind-boggling how many people are still thinking at that level and don't understand that we are more complex than just thoughts. That we are more than just like little synapses and chemical reactions in our body, and kind of like these biological machines that are kind of just made to walk around through this world and, I don't know, go and procreate, make kids, and then die, right? I really think that we have more to ourselves than just that. So this is a theory of, let's call it materialism, right? A lot of scientists actually think this, which is kind of interesting to me. And it says more about them, I guess, than it says about anything else, because fact of the matter is, it's just not working, especially in the terms of psyche, of how the human being works. But they are kind of focused on the science part. And science is great. I mean, don't get me wrong, I have a lot of scientists in my family, and I get to talk to them all the time, and I see this kind of perspective. But I can also tell you that science just got me so far, and my life kind of didn't get any better. And the only solution would have been, well, you know, I don't know, take medication or take this, or just, you know, learn to adapt. Like start settling, you know, start settling for certain life circumstances. And I didn't want to settle. I kind of went out and was looking for more. Same thing with spirituality. Spirituality kind of goes the other direction. It says, well, science and all that, fuck all. We don't care about that. Everybody is like in this wonderful cloud and everything is connected, and you just need to really want it so hard, and then it's going to manifest like magically, and you don't need to care about worldly things, you know, like that is a different kind of escaping mechanism. And you don't want to do that either. Like, spirituality is also not giving credit to the human psyche of how it actually works, of the different brains that need different things. And it's just saying like, well, you know, there's like this wonderful overlord that is going to help you with all the issues that you have. But it doesn't work like that. Again, it's not working. What actually works and what we have is the fact of the matter that our brain has evolved over hundreds of thousands of years, and that there are certain rules on how to work with that brain. So what we've talked about today is when you have a problem at a certain level of your brain structure, of how it is made, you need to solve it at that level. The reptilian brain, it's the one that is managing your feeling of hunger. If you feel sleepy, if you need to go and rest, it's for the fight or flight mechanism, but it can also freeze. So it's also the one oftentimes that would, let's say if something traumatic happens, it's the one that freezes. So we kind of really have to go deep for certain situations and to go to the reptilian brain to make it happen. You very well know that when you're hungry or when you're tired, your cognitive functions are kind of impaired. You're not doing your best work, you're not being your best self when you don't take care of the needs of the kind of root core system, which is the reptilian brain. And then you have the mammalian stuff, which is warmth and emotions and connections and community and socializing and love and all these beautiful things, but that can also be traumatizing. Many different things can happen there that kind of stop the emotions in its tracks. And if you don't go down to there and feel those emotions, feel those sensations, get into it, and really kind of work through it, there's no way to go around that. And then we have the cognitive level, and the cognitive level, again, that solves its own problems. So if you are, again, have to solve like a certain math problem, you're going to go and use that part of the brain. Like nothing emotional is going to help you with that. If you're having, I don't know, have to create a new logo, or if you have to do anything business related, or if you have to do like so much of our world today, which is kind of knowledge information based, relies on that part of the brain. So that's why we also have overdeveloped it. And in the realm of mental health, mental wellness, of life quality, you want to develop your relationship to the other brains as well, so that you can understand them, take them seriously, because again, they really want to be taken seriously. And the thing is, you kind of cannot go around the reptilian, right? Like when you're hungry, you really need to eat. And if you don't eat, you're going to die. And when you're tired, you really need to go sleep, because if you don't sleep, you're going to land in a hospital somewhere, just like it's not possible. So this one's rather non-negotiable. And what we usually tend to do is to suppress like these mammalian type of stuff to make ourselves function. So usually it's the mid layer is the one that is really, really suffering. And when you start doing trauma work, when you start going into all these types of, let's also say shadow questions, if you want to start doing explorative psychology with yourself, a very, very good place to start out is just to ask yourself, what am I trying to not feel right now that a part of me wants to be feeling? And the interesting thing of how the whole theory works of the psyche, of the human psyche, again, this is like not a finished process. We are still kind of trying to find out and develop everything. But to the best of my knowledge, how psyche works, it's 2025. It's that when we suppress certain feelings, then we don't just suppress these feelings, but also healthy parts of ourselves. Like when, let's say it's some negative feelings, obviously we don't want to feel those. But these are also connected to a healthy part, like to good feelings and to power and to energy, to life force. And we're also suppressing that. Now, again, this sounds like a super old spiritual kind of idea, which still rings true. If you suppress something, like if you split off parts of yourself, you split off the good parts too. Like, life isn't just the happy and the good all the time. Life also has kind of sad situations around it and bad situations around it. And these are also feelings and emotions that have their place. You know? And if you don't want to feel those, well, kind of the good ones will also struggle to appear. And the more you suppress, the more you will notice that your life quality is going to be less and less. Also, whatever you resist persists. So if these feelings that you don't want to feel, if you have to stuff them down, guess what? You will have to continue stuffing them down, which will continuously make you more and more tired because it's tying up energy from you to do that. And that is also going to impair your life quality. So the crazy thing about it, the really crazy thing, is the healthy parts are kind of having less and less energy if you are suppressing certain things that you don't want to feel, that you want to put out of your life. When you create the split and say, like, this is not me, I don't want to feel that, I don't want to see that, you are making yourself less. And I think it's a great analogy if you've like read Harry Potter. That's a really, really cool thing. You know, when kind of Voldemort does these bad deeds, then he splits his soul into these Horcruxes, right? And he ties them to that certain thing. So it's like when he's doing something as a perpetrator, like a really bad thing, he does these. And the same thing goes for our psyche. Like when you have perpetrators, when they are doing the bad stuff they do, that's also traumatizing for them. It's not just traumatizing for the other person, but it's also traumatizing for them. So what they do is they split off a part of their psyche and have to lock it away somewhere in order to be able to continue doing that. It's crazy how Rowling actually got this analogy. And there you also can see it, like our mammalian brain, the things and these emotions and these symbolisms, it kind of knows. It kind of knows that this is already happening. And there is a key inside of yourself how to reclaim your power, how to become yourself again, how to be more of who you are. And regain access to these wonderful, wonderful parts of yourself that you don't have to split off anymore. You can reclaim yourself piece by piece by allowing to feel what you don't want to feel. And usually what I hear from people is like, but I don't really want to feel that. Like, if I allow that to come up, it's going to take over my life. It is not. You want to do that in a controlled environment. You want to do it in a setting where you do like a meditation, a small release, and you want to do it with mechanisms that you know how to handle it. So you can do box breathing, which is stabilizing for the whole nervous system. We have like this vegetative nervous system, and we can influence it by creating stress regulation. And one of the easiest way to influence is breath. So if you do like box breathing, they're doing this in the military, learning it there, for example. But you can also do like the 6-3-6-3 method, which is pranic breathing, basically. Inhaling for 6, like have a count of 6, then hold your breath for 3, exhale for 6, and hold your breath for 3. That's also a form of repetitive box breathing, and it will really help you calm down will really help you stabilize your vegetative nervous system so that you can kind of go into a release where you start releasing these emotions, these pent-up feelings, but also do it in a controlled environment so it doesn't spiral out of control. What you also can do is like stand up and kind of go onto the edges of your feet and a little bit into your knees. And what that does is it really makes your legs tense on the outside, which gives you a lot of stability. By doing this, you then also start feeling very grounded. And by feeling grounded, your vegetative nervous system, again, kind of gets this feeling of, okay, I'm in a safe place. Here's security. So it's easier for you to allow these sensations to come up and happen. And when they come up, it's just about allowing yourself to feel those. Because as we've talked before, the language of the mammalian brain kind of needs time. It kind of needs time to develop. And these emotions, these sensations, these feelings, they're like waves. They're going to go through you like waves. And it's not something that you need to be afraid of, that it's going to persist forever. It's going to persist forever if you resist it, right? That is, by resisting, you keep it down there and it's always peaking up and you always see it like, oh my God, it's still there. Ah! And that's not something that is going to happen once you allow them to come up and to go through you, because they are just a flow. They're the flow of energy. They're the flow of life. And it is something that we are designed to feel. Your brain is designed to go through these motions because this is how you learn. This is how things come together on a much deeper level than your thoughts will ever be able to go. Our thoughts that we have, again, like the cognitive part, it's not that old. Our mammalian brain is much, much, much older and much, much, much wiser in terms of survival. If you think about that, you come from a long, long line of descendants, a very, very long line, of hundreds and thousands, of millions of years of living beings who had children, who did then survive, and who had children again. Like, there's so many generations that this deeper brain kind of made happen. It was wise enough to survive, to not get itself killed, and it was wise enough to find itself a partner, to form a family, and to have offspring. Time and time and time again. And you are the product of such a direct line that goes on for millions of years. I would say that's pretty trustworthy. How this brain brought you to this point. So maybe don't give in to the mind that says, I'm superior, I'm the best. Yes, we have technological developments, but are we truly happy? Does my smartphone make me happy? Is it really better for my life that satellites are circling around the Earth? It's something different. It's something different. My life quality in terms of my psyche and everything that's going on in my body, it's completely unrelated to this. So learn to connect to these different parts of yourself. Learn to connect with the language of your other brains and actually go and have a better life through that. Everything has its place, but don't give in to the mind games that are kind of trying to prevent you from taking these other things seriously. What they are preventing you is to actually go into feeling, because it's afraid that these feelings are going to hijack it, which they are going to do for a moment. It's afraid of what might happen. It's afraid of the sheer power that lies beneath it. And that's normal. And yet you can feel the fear and do that anyway. And fear is, by the way, an emotion itself. So don't take it too seriously. What you really want to take seriously is what you're trying to stuff down. You want to get access to it by allowing it to come up and feel through it by breathing and securing yourself. That's all I want to say for today. I hope that you got out a lot. If you have some questions, if you have some remarks, do contact me. Do write a comment, write an email, and I will see you in the next episode. This is the Exaltify Me podcast. I'm your host, Nenad Leonart. Take care and see you in the next one.